Welcome to this episode of Inside Legal ESG podcast series. My name is Pamela Cohn, and I'm the host of Inside Legal ESG podcast series, and I'm also the founder and CEO of Amity Advisory, an ESG consulting firm. In this series, we have discussions with a wide range of expert guests on the topic of ESG and what it means for the legal profession, both in-house and at law firms. We explore this from two perspectives. One with respect to the practice of law, serving clients and guiding client companies if you're a GC, and with respect to the business of law, embarking on your own firm's ESG journey and the growing stakeholder expectations around that. Today's guest, however, is not from the legal profession, but rather from the public accounting profession, which is somewhat ahead of us when it comes to ESG. Jennifer Harrity-Cantero serves as the director of Sensiba Center for Sustainability at the CPA firm of Sensiba San Filippo in the Bay Area. She has been with the firm for more than 11 years, and in that time has guided the firm through its B Corp certification, which we'll talk about more today, and also in growing its service line in sustainability advice and consulting to their clients. Welcome, Jennifer, and thank you so much for agreeing to be my guest today.
Hi, Pamela. Welcome. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. This is going to be a lot of fun.
I think so too. So let's start out with the obvious question, and that is, what is B Corp certification? How would you describe that to firms that might be interested?
Right. So B Corp, it's been around for about 15 years now. It is a third-party certification for for-profit companies, certifying that their social and environmental performance is of the highest quality, that they are highly transparent and accountable with their social and environmental performance. You can think of other companies such as Patagonia or Ben and Jerry's, Tom's, both the toothpaste and the shoes. There's lots of consumer brands have this certification, but it's not just a consumer brand certification. It is a great way to look at your firm and in all of the different aspects it operates to, one, be more social and environmentally responsible, but also look at the level of ESG risk. The B Corp framework is one of many frameworks out there for ESG. I like it because it is a free framework. You don't have to pay to download it. It is fully accessible for anybody. And it's one of those frameworks that in order to hold the certification, you need to redo once every 3 years. And it is audited by the oversight body B Lab. Lots of alliterations on the letter B here. But B Lab is the one that actually started this, and they have a whole separate body that helps them set their standards so that there's no conflict of interest between the standard setting and the auditing. So it's one of the only frameworks out there that has a built-in audit because you get a full certification of it. And it is really scales to be material for the business and the industry. As you go through the assessment, which is about 300 questions, give or take, 250 to 300 questions, as you answer them, there's lots of questions that aren't worth any points because they just want to get to know your company. And then once you answer those questions, it builds out automatically the rest of the assessment that actually do garnish as points. And there's 200 points possible. Of that, you need to reach a minimum of 80 points currently. This is going to change a little bit in 2024, but currently 80 points in order to submit for being audit and certified. And you may think, 80 points possible out of 200, that shouldn't be too bad. I can tell you, not to discourage anybody, but 1 in 3 companies that attempt certification actually succeed. It is an extremely robust and rigorous certification process, partially because a lot of the a lot of the things that you look at are things that you haven't looked at since you started the company, right? It's a lot of taking policies and procedures that live in somebody's head and documenting them for sometimes the first time. There's a lot of times where you're going to come across things where it's going to ask for metrics of things that you've never even thought about measuring. So it does take some time to gather all the data. And for any question where you garnish points, you will need to upload documentation to validate that answer. So completing the assessment does take a fair bit of time. On average, 9 to 12 months for a company to complete an assessment. Being a B Corp consultant coming from an accounting firm, accountants, we can collate data and documentation like nobody's business. It's our superpower.
Yes.
So most of our clients we can normally get through in about 6 months, the full start to finish on the assessment. And then they go into verification with B Lab. So they do the full background check and reviewing the assessment and whatnot.
So what year did your firm embark on this journey, and what motivated them to pursue B Corp certification?
Right. So my managing partner, John Sensiba, and I each heard about this thing called B Corp back in 2017. And we looked at it and thought, oh, this really is a third-party audit that we really walk the talk. Being an accounting firm, we understood that the importance and the quality that an audit brings to data and statements, right? Just saying that your financial statements are true does not make them true. You need to have an audit, right? So saying that we really do walk the talk and realizing that every other accounting firm was saying the same thing, we're like, okay, we need to differentiate ourselves on this and really put money where our mouth is, right? We need to put in the time and the effort to really put forth a certification to have somebody come in and just verify that, yes, they do really walk the talk in all of these different areas, and be fully transparent on here are their scores in all of these different areas. And, so it was really to our culture and our values worthwhile to go through something like this. And we knew we were going to get some benefits from going through certification. But the level of amazingness that came out of this, just from a recruiting standpoint, accounting firms, we all get put into the gymnasium hall in a big group on, career day, and, the doors open and all the students come in and immediately flood to all the big four accounting firms.
Yeah.
And the rest of us regional firms are there twiddling our thumbs, waiting for a good 20 or 30 minutes before we even see the first student in our booth, right? When we finally got our certification in May of 2018, we put the big B Corp logo on our booth very proudly. And so when students came in the room, they dead stopped and said, wait, there's a B Corp accounting firm? Because they're learning what B Corp and conscious capitalism and purpose mission-driven companies are in their school and their classwork. And they understand what that is, and that very much resonates with their own values and mission as humans, right? And so the fact that they could work at an accounting firm that walks that talk really impressed them. And so suddenly we were just as busy as the big four booths.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yes. So we got first crack at a lot of the top talent. Yes. And we've since had a lot of experienced hires come to us from other firms saying that they really love our values and the fact that we are of certified B Corp. Because that does hold weight. When you see that B Corp logo on a product, that company is doing right by the planet. It's doing right by their employees, paying them a fair living wage. It's doing great work in their community. It's operating on the governance level at a all stakeholders governance instead of an all shareholders governance.
So that was going to be my next question. It's obviously made a difference for you in recruiting and talent attraction, which is wonderful. How has it made a difference for you in the way your partnership behaves, or some of the policies or governance models at your firm? And how did you get buy-in from the partners to make those sorts of structural changes?
I will say I was very blessed because when my managing partner approached the partner group and said, hey, this is something we would like to do, our partner group is extremely diverse, lots of different backgrounds and beliefs and political leanings. And
Mhm.
every single person around that table saw the importance of it and said, we are 100% behind this, go for it.
Oh, how wonderful.
And I know that is not a typical case, but I think that just spoke to, how wonderful our firm culture is. And so yeah, we went through and we did it with the blessing of all the partners. Some are like, okay, I think this is a good idea. I'm still a little skeptical, but I think it's a good idea.
Mhm. Mhm.
And part of the process of going through B Corp certification is that B Lab requires companies to shift their entity type to, if they're a C corporation or an S corporation, to a benefit corporation or a public benefit corporation, or a social benefit public, whatever your state has as its flavor of benefit corporation. And in some states, there's even a benefit LLC. So if you're an LLC, putting benefit LLC, but making that entity shift means that you're going into your governance documents and updating the language, and B Lab provides the exact language, so that you don't even have to do that work. And B Labs, the benefit corporation language was actually helped drafted by the first B Corp law firm, Hanson Bridget, Jonathan Strooper over there, amazing guy. And so it's been looked at by lawyers. So
Mhm. Mhm.
it is solid. And so you take this language and you put it into your governance. And for a partnership like us, we basically took this language and put it into our partnership agreement. And the essence of it is that you take all stakeholders into account when making business decisions, and that you're not looking at just shareholder or owner value, right? So that when you're, and I think accounting firms, law firms, they tend to do this anyways, because that's just part of our ethical beliefs, right?
Mhm.
That
Mhm.
we're not going to make a business decision that is going to hurt our employees, that is going to hurt our community. I think we're better stewards than that, right? And that's just kind of ethically how we operate, is that we always want to do what's best for the common good. So I think a
So,
lot of us already operate that way.
so that was going to be my question is if your firm is already of that mindset, you probably won't feel much change.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like your firm just took it in stride, that this is sort of just getting down on paper the way you were behaving anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, it really was. And strengthening in certain areas, because as you go through the assessment, it starts giving you ideas on how you can operate better.
Mhm.
Or things that you can do to help eliminate more risk within your business, right? Like different policies and procedures that you could put into place. Different ways on leveraging your supply chain that would eliminate supply chain risk, right?
Mhm.
Um, so it really does help you look at and make your company better and stronger, even if you already walk that talk. There are several companies that I've worked with where um, this isn't the case, right?
Mhm.
They're doing this, and I had one company approach me and say, yes, B Corp certification is our end goal, but for us, the importance is the journey of this. And we want to use this framework to create organizational transformation.
Mhm.
And that got me so excited. And we started working with them in 2019. We just submitted their audit the end of 2022. I mean, there was a pandemic in there, and we kind of had to
Mhm.
reshift
Mhm.
how they operated as an organization. But this business owner said he would not have survived COVID with his business. He's a manufacturer,
Mhm.
if he had not started this process,
Wow.
because this process helped him build loyalty with his employees in a way, that strengthened that bond and that relationship, that allowed him to start working on strengthening his supply chain, so that when COVID hit, he
Mhm.
was able to still stay in business
Wow.
and
That's an
produce
incredible
product.
success story.
Right? Like this is the type of stuff it helps people do and why it is so important for companies to really look at ESG metrics and if not B Corp framework, SASB or TCFD or we have our own ESG framework that we're working on with called Impact IQ. That is really fantastic. So picking a framework and running a company through the framework is so important. And if you're going to be doing this work or working with any clients in a sustainability space, doing this work on your own firm first, I think is the biggest first step you can make.
I would say it's absolutely mandatory
Right.
because if I were working at a law firm or an accounting firm and I were pitching my clients about ESG services and how I could be helpful to them, the first thing I would say is that potential client is, tell me what your firm is doing. What framework are you using? How have you explored, B Corp certification, or where are you on the journey, right? And if you don't have answers to those questions, why would I hire you to help me with my journey?
Exactly that. And that's our motto for our services. After we became B Corp certified, but back when I was doing this, I was the head of marketing.
Yeah.
I'm not even an accountant. I was the head of marketing for 10 years at our firm, and working us through B Corp certification, I fell in love with everything about it. And I went to my managing partner and I said, what if I helped our clients through B Corp certification? Because
the whole new service line, right?
Exactly. And we both saw the potential for it. We knew that there were regulations coming down from the SEC soon and the state of California. And so, we saw the opportunity to start dipping our toe in the water there. And it just started with simple B Corp consulting. I had another audit partner come to me and say, hey, I hear you're doing this. I want to get in on this. And there's this credential I can get, this FSA credential, so that I can do SASB type reports, and let's do it as a sustainability niche. And I said, okay, great. And the partners liked the idea. And so we started down with just our two little humble service offerings. And then it really started to blossom. And in discussions with my managing partner, we kind of dreamt up this holistic practice where we could help a company move the impact needle forward in every aspect of their business. And that is what we built and launched in September of 2020. And just earlier in 2022, I was fully extricated from marketing, passed my 10-year-old baby over to somebody else, and fully went full time into sustainability. And it has been a very rewarding shift.
Oh, I can imagine. And to see the progress as client, even if it's a long process, as you described it, to get clients from just starting on the journey to getting B Corp certified, it must be incredibly rewarding.
Very rewarding, very rewarding. And we've had B Corp folks that are already B Corp certified come to us and say, okay, we've been B Corp certified for a few years. We want to go next steps. And we have, so many tools in our toolbox now that we can help them with next steps, whether that's an Impact IQ or, climate neutral certified, or, all the different tools we have in our toolbox now. And it's really a lot of fun.
And I noticed on your website, it's like a whole separate service line now, sustainability, and it's all these different services that clients can hire you for.
Yeah.
So in addition to what your firm is doing, which frankly is exemplary, and I think far ahead of what any other accounting firm I've seen is doing, what other new areas of service do you think are going to emerge for accounting firms, given the forthcoming regulations and disclosure requirements, and frankly, third-party assurance?
Right. So there's so much coming. And all of 2022, I was out on the speaking circuit trying to educate other accounting firms on what is coming. Because if we're going to have to start putting climate disclosures and human capital disclosures on financial reports, we're going to need to know how to calculate that data in-house. It's not like we can do an outsourced R&D tax credit type of measurement. This is going to have to be an in-house type of deal. And, I asked them, I said, how many auditors on your staff can currently do carbon accounting? How many audit partners do you have that know carbon accounting numbers well enough to sign off on these financial reports that they are true and put their license on the line? And suddenly I get some very wide eyes in the audience whenever I start bringing this up. It is going to be a whole new world for the accounting. And I think what's really exciting about it is sustainability is one of the most attractive new waves of industries in the career world that students are looking at.
Yes.
And typically, I don't know about the legal world, but in the accounting world, since 2016, we've seen a 40 to 50% drop in graduates for accounting.
Wow.
So the amount of people we have to pull from, the talent pool is really trickling down. We are in a severe drought of talent over in the accounting world.
Mm-hmm.
Because people just aren't, accounting isn't sexy.
It's not sexy.
It's not sexy. Sustainability in ESG is going to make it sexy.
Yeah.
Where folks are going to want to go into accounting because they get to help companies make this organizational transformation and calculate this data and report on this data.
Yeah.
So it's that I see in the future, accounting students are gonna be a lot more accounting graduates than we have now.
Yep.
A lot of them are going to have environmental science minors.
Yep. I agree.
And we're going to see lots of opportunity for accounting firms to get in on the compliance side.
Mm-hmm.
And I think once accounting firms kind of get in on the compliance and measurement to put on the financial reports, they're going to start to see the opportunities for strategy, for implementation, for consulting. And that is where the real opportunity lies. Not in just doing the framework, and soon opportunities for auditing are going to start to be required because, first and foremost, we're at the very beginning of all of this. The global standards organization for accounting, the IFRS, IFRS, just put into play the ISSB, which is, supposed to be governing all of the sustainability stuff. They're like, okay, this is going to be a thing. We need an oversight body for this, right? And so ISSB got created just November of 21. So it is still so new. It's only a year old.
Yeah.
And so I think there's lots of opportunities. It's only up from here. And anyone who says that, oh, we don't need sustainability numbers, I look at them and say, were you the ones in the 90s that said you didn't need a website?
Yeah.
Very much the same thing.
I'm old enough to remember a partnership meeting where the firm I was with and the partners were debating whether or not to buy a fax machine. So there you go.
Yeah. I mean, we've come a long way.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's not a matter of if, it's only a matter of when.
Right.
And I think at first, because this is so new, all of us are just going to be measuring.
Yep.
Right. We're going to be measuring all of this data. Then we're going to be like, okay, now that we've measured it and we've got a consistent data set, let's go back and tweak our data to make it better. Right. Let's look at reducing our carbon footprint, not just measuring it and offsetting it.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Let's look at reducing it. And
and in doing that, I think your point earlier about how many of you auditors, feel comfortable signing off on carbon accounting numbers. I think law firms, or accounting firms, and I'm certainly seeing this in the Big Four, they are hiring people like crazy with climate and environmental science backgrounds. And they aren't necessarily CPAs. They're just trying to beef up the science side of their service offering because, your typical auditor is not a climate scientist, nor should pretend to be.
Yes, exactly. So, we've hired sustainability MBAs. We now have a biogeochemist or excuse me, a marine biogeochemist on staff. And who would have thought to have that title on an accounting staff, right? And so, it's really exciting to see that we're at the beginning stages, we're measuring, we're going to be reducing, and then a lot of the regulations, when they first hit, they're going to be coming out in stages, where it's going to be just measuring scopes 1, scope 2. So, carbon accounting, you have several scopes. Right now, you really only need to worry about the first 3. There's going to be a 4th one soon, but that's a whole nother ball game. But really measuring scopes 1 and scope 2, very easy. Anybody can do that, right?
Yes.
Scope 3 is the kitchen sink. It's where everything else lies, supply chain stuff. And that's really what's going to do the trickle down effect. A lot of folks are like, oh, all this legislation is just for public companies.
Exactly.
And
And this
scope
is what's,
3,
yeah,
that
and
scope
this
3 is what's going to hit privately held small to medium-sized businesses. And
including law firms and accounting firms who
exactly.
historically think they're immune because number
Mhm.
one, we're not publicly traded. Number two, we're a private partnership. But our clients need our carbon data because we're part of their
Exactly.
scope 3. And this is coming as a shock to most professional service firms.
Right, because we're part of that supply chain, whether
Yep.
we like it or not.
Yep.
And if it's a difference between going with a law firm that has their carbon numbers and another law firm that doesn't, guess who's going to get that business?
Yes,
Right.
I agree. I'm seeing it already for sure.
Yeah. And so the other piece that particularly for the legal world that's going to be interesting is the greenwashing
Mhm.
lawsuits. There's going to be a lot more greenwashing and brand wagoning and social washing, all of those terms. And I'm sure there's going to be some new ones that I haven't even heard yet.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
is, companies out there stating grandiose claims without having data to back it up.
Yeah.
And
Or
consumers
behavior to back it up.
behavior,
Right.
exactly. So consumers are demanding these things.
Yeah.
And they're speaking up and calling a lot of companies out.
Yeah.
There is a coffee brand that just did a class settlement for $10 million.
And this
So
was on
these
like greenwashing claims. I
false
think the other,
advertising. Yeah.
yep. And I think the other things that law firms and accounting firms are starting to see as well is scrutiny around the actual work being done for clients.
Mhm.
So for instance, if a law firm is representing an oil and gas company, that in itself is not necessarily a bad thing. But if you're helping that oil and gas company fight carbon regulation in order to maintain the status quo, that's a lot different than helping that oil and gas company transition to renewables, right? So
Correct.
what kind of work are you doing for your
Mhm.
clients?
Mhm.
Because it doesn't work to just talk about your pro bono cases and your community engagement on your website, and then the work you're doing for clients is more than offsetting whatever good you're doing over here. And there is a law students for climate accountability group. I don't know if you've seen any of their work.
Oh, that's fantastic.
But they're really scrutinizing what is it that law firms are doing
Mhm.
to either help society move to a cleaner, more just society, or maintain the status quo. And there's
Yeah.
no place to hide. There's no place
Right.
to hide when law
Particularly
firms are
these
doing
days
that.
with social media and
Yeah.
no place to hide for sure. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunities there. And it's for folks to do better.
So
And yeah.
I have a lot more questions, but we're coming up on time. So I'm gonna pose two more questions to you.
Mhm.
And maybe we've already touched on this. What are your predictions for the prevalence of ESG considerations in all business?
I think sustainability and ESG is going to be one of the biggest disruptors in business. Behind supply chain disruptions, behind the talent wars, ESG is right up there, top 3. Because this legislation will be coming down. April, SEC is expected to come down in April, mid to end of April this year. And these regulations are going to come down at a time and ask companies to start measuring when our economy, they're really worried about their financial implications of the economy right now. So asking them to take on it is a financial burden because it does take time and money to calculate this stuff. I think the EU has done a fantastic job about writing into the law that companies that have the resources need to help the smaller companies within their supply chain do this accounting work.
Mhm.
We don't quite have that written in here in the US.
Yeah.
But I do think it's gonna be quite a burden for smaller companies to do a lot of this work. So I think, yeah, I think sustainability ESG is going to be a huge disruptor. And it is already in the news, but it is going to be all over the news in the next year and a half
I,
as businesses either embrace or push back.
Yep. And I completely agree. And I also predict longer term that ESG is not going to be a separate thing. It's just going to be the way we all do business because it's like the
Correct.
norm. Just like
Correct.
just like the technology revolution, right? At first,
Mhm.
having computers was a weird thing on your desk.
Right.
And
Right.
email outside of your own firm was a new concept. And now it's just like you can't do business without it. And I
Mhm.
do predict that right now ESG is a separate service line and a separate practice group at law firms or accounting firms. But eventually it's just going to be a mindset and it's going to be the way we serve clients, always with ESG considerations in mind.
Right, right. And
It'll
so
just
when
norm.
lawyers sit down with brand new clients to set up entities and things, they
Mhm,
need to start thinking about, hey, not just C Corp, S Corp,
mhm.
LLC, but are you going to be a mission or purpose-driven organization? Do we need to start talking about benefit corporation or
Yeah,
benefit LLC and just setting up that way from the start?
from the get-go. Yeah.
Do we need to have all stakeholder language in here so that when you go down the line to do your further work or setting up your organization, that it's already in place so that you don't have to go back and redo it later.
Well, this has been incredibly enlightening, Jennifer. I could talk to you all day. I would love to have you back at a future version,
Yes.
a future episode of our podcast, just to see if our predictions come true.
Right.
Suspect they
Yes.
will. Thank you again so much for your time, and thank you to our audience for listening to Inside Legal ESG. And today's guest was Jennifer Harrity-Cantero. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Pamela.